Hi, my name is Karin Wallach. Berkowitz. I got married recently, so it's Berkowitz now. And I'm going to be presenting on scaling developer communities, lessons learned from cybersecurity, graph databases, and beyond. This is applicable to all different types of communities, so hopefully you guys all get something from it. All right. So just a quick background, my story. So I started my career working in music industry. I worked with a lot of really big names like Eminem and 50 Cent doing marketing and things like that. I started a women's networking group in New York City when I was living there. It organically grew and became humongous. It started with just like me and my girlfriends wanting to meet up for happy hour. And I kept getting donations for free drinks and free spaces. And then like next thing I knew is like I'm organizing events with hundreds of people. I eventually dropped it. I took a job in community development and I've been doing that since. So I've worked with graph database company, Neo4j, doing community development. And then I moved to another startup. It was very, very early stage startup called Startree. And I did community development, like developer relations kind of stuff for them. Not that, like developer relations, you guys probably don't care, but these logos probably mean nothing to you if you don't work in like the technical space. But and then I consulted for a little while, for 2 years. I had my own consultancy, doing community work and developer relations. And now I'm working with Torque, which is a cybersecurity company, building their community out. So my first observations at Neo4j. Neo4j had a very, very thriving, active, lively community. And I was wondering how this happened, right? So there is like this enthusiasm for the product, which is one thing that definitely helps and can carry a community kind of on its own. But I really give a lot of credit to this guy who was one of my colleagues. His name was Michael Hunger. He was doing a lot of things that I believe resulted in the community being so active and thriving. Whether he knew it or not, I don't think he did. I think a lot of it was organic. And I think that's why a lot of organic communities end up flourishing, is because there's somebody in there that's doing this. Sometimes it's multiple people, whether they know it or not. It's usually kind of a very organic thing. But there's a few things that he would do. And the first one is that he would be very grateful for any kind of contribution of any sorts, like somebody's giving them his time or responding to something or whatever. Gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. Thank you, thank you, thank you. He's also recognition. That was another big part, because you could be grateful, but unless you actually recognize that somebody is contributing their time, it can be, you can miss it. So letting them know like, hey, I see you. Thanks for doing this. That's a big deal too. And inclusion. He would do things and always include everyone. And I think that those are the elements that helped Neo4j become so have this really thriving community. So when I came in, I was very fortunate to come into this like very lively, healthy community. So overall, the community ecosystem. So a lot of times we ask things from our community members, whether it's like professional exchanges or we want content or whatever. The thing is that when we think about what we want our community to contribute, the question is like, what does the community also want to get back? And you have to make sure that it feeds that cycle. So if you're asking your community members to talk about their use case, but no one really cares to hear about other people's use cases, then it's not going to work. Maybe people want to hear how they did something better or something else, but in a way, it kind of has to be, I hate using this word selfish, but it has to be also selfish for your community members. Your community members have to feel like they're getting something, and whatever that is. So whenever you're asking your customers for something or community for something, you want to also make sure that it is also feeding your community with the things that they're looking for. Okay, so types of users. So there's a few different types of users in every kind of community. And this is kind of like a general overview. So you have your lurkers. These are the ones that kind of sit in the background and just observe what's going on. And they say nothing, they do nothing, they just watch. Then you have your commenters. These are people who do like a very little bit of something, like they might like something or maybe comment or whatever. And then you have your contributors. This is a very small percentage, generally, like it's usually a very small percentage of your community, but they are the ones that like raise their hand, do all the things, write all the blogs, post all the posts, respond to everybody's, not post all the posts. Like it might do a little bit of everything, but they contribute like in a kind of meaningful way to your community. So it's important to think about those things because when you're creating community programs, you have to consider making sure that you're feeding into all these people and what they need. And this kind of goes into the ecosystem, right? Like most of your community is probably going to be made up of lurkers and commenters. So when you have your contributors contributing something, you want to make sure that it's also feeding the ecosystem of your lurkers and commenters. So minimize the barrier to entry. So what I see happening very frequently, which I think is like every time I see this, I'm just like, pull my hair out. I'm like, it's just hard for me to hear it all the time. But people are always asking their community for like very large contributions. And it's not to say that people won't do it, but it's very difficult if you have like if your community has never written blog posts and you're like, hey, everybody write a blog post, like you're going to get a very low response to what you could do, what would be possible if you minimize the barrier to entry. So you want to think about like, how can I get a little bit of something, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, and then you get them to the point where they can write a blog post. Things like writing a blog post can be incredibly intimidating if you've never done it. And it can also take a really long time. So if you have no experience writing blog posts, it can just feel intimidating and it takes forever. And it's just not an easy thing to do. So if you want your community to contribute in a way, start with something small, get a quote, get a review, whatever, things like that, that you can potentially use and then eventually spiral into other types of content. And there is ways that you can get up the ladder. Don't have enough time to dig into everything in this presentation on how to encourage people to make sure that they contribute along the way. And they continue doing more and more, but there are ways to do that as well. Okay, minimizing the barriers to entry. I use a lot of real world examples as like when I'm building community or like things like that and how it makes me feel. So things like Google reviews in this example, and there's a lot of pictures, so you can just ignore it for a second as I'm walking you through. So Google reviews, you could argue that it's really not a community, but it also is, right? So you have users, they're providing something and it's of value to other people. So their Google reviews thing it is a community and it functions like a community. And I also want to say, like, whenever you're modeling things off of very large companies, they have a lot of strategy and money and research that is pushed towards these programs. So you should definitely pay attention. And like Google reviews to me is I think it's like a perfect example of how to get people to do stuff and asking them for more and more and more. Like I'm sure you've been sucked in to Google reviews, putting a review up and you don't even care about reviews. Like I remember Yelp. I never contributed to Yelp, not one time. Google reviews, I have like hundreds of reviews now. They sucked me in. So I paid attention to how they sucked you in. So they do little by little. And what I mean is first, they say, how was it? Just give us a star review. No need for anything else. You don't have to write anything, no pictures, whatever, whatever. And what do they do right after? So that's the bottom picture right there. How was Stubbs barbecue? Then they do it again, whatever. And then they say, thank you so much for doing this. Where's the thank you? It's in there somewhere. Oh, it says thanks for the tip right underneath the 5 stars. So first they say gratitude. They say thank you so much. And then they tell the recognition. They tell you like that you have been impactful and valuable. You're top 10% of restaurant reviewers in your thing, whatever. And I'm sure everybody's gotten this because I feel like they just feed it to everybody who puts any kind of review, but it doesn't matter. I'm like, this is part of the strategy. It works. So they tell you like, hey, your top 10 reviews, or like, this is how many views your pictures got. It makes you feel like you had value and impact. You were able to provide something. They also make you level up. They give you these points that are completely meaningless. But every time you get it, you're like, oh, wow, I got 10 stars or whatever. And it just feels good. I don't know why, but it has like some emotional element to it. So that's like a level of leveling up and getting points and things like that. And then they start asking you for more details. They're like, hey, you're an expert in this place, right? They want to make sure they feel good. And then they're like, can you contribute more? Can you answer these questions? Or can you put a review, like write things about it? And that is how they suck you in to doing things. So that's the level. But I think like this slide, I think I think you could take a lot away from how to get people to do stuff. Okay. Oh man, I feel like I'm rambling. Oh, okay. Wow, this slide, the title is wrong. But Doesn't matter. So overall, like, I think the things that uh this is actually, I'm trying to think about what this slide is. I think this is my takeaway slide. No, so okay. So this is the kind of stuff, this is the stuff that you need to think about when you're considering um you're building out your community. I'm sorry that the title is off. It was, I had to do duplicate slides and whatever, and it's building presentations takes a lot. And I'm like not the most detailed person, so I like really suck when it comes to this stuff. Okay, but there are things to consider when you're building a community. And if you include these elements, chances are you will see a lot of success, right? And also, you have to think about like the ecosystem thing and like minimizing the barrier to entry. Those are really important. So, gratitude, recognition, inclusion, feelings of leveling up, feelings of usefulness and value. Like I have programs now that I have built out where I literally have a step in there where it's like we provide feedback to make them feel impactful. Like I collect all the views that their videos got. I collect all the comments and I give that feedback back to them to make them feel good. It's literally a step in my process. And then earn swag. This is a lot of controversy because there's a lot of swag that people get and they just don't care about it. But I promise you, if you have earned swag, it is like it touches you. And my example for that is the Red Cross. I think that they did an incredible job. I used to donate platelets, blood platelets, whatever, doesn't matter. But they used to send these emails to us and they had this email. I remember getting this at the beginning of the year because anytime I get, like as I mentioned, I take away from a lot of real life examples. And I got this email from them and it said like, hey, if you do this by the end of the year, you get, if you do 8 donations or 7 donations or whatever, you get this. And like, I remember seeing this. I don't even know where this jacket is. I'm really upset about that actually. But I know where it is, but doesn't matter. I had a lot of moving around in the last couple of years. But so I looked at this email and I was like, I want this jacket. And my goal was to get this stupid jacket that is, I don't even wear that kind of stuff. Like everything I wear is like, I wear like stuff from Aloe and Lululemon. Like I'm not wearing this like gray American Red Cross, like it looks like I work there kind of thing. I'm not, it actually says plasma donor on it, which is like a big deal. And that's kind of like the earned swag thing, the plasma donor. I ended up getting the jacket, by the way. I just want to put that out there. And I was like so excited about it. But earned swag has meaning. And when you're working towards something and it's like exclusive and it labels you as a thing, there's a whole other thing about personas and like how like instead of saying, oh, like, do you want to contribute? You can say, do you want to be a contributor? That it generally has a little bit more of a personal impact on somebody's level of contribution. Doesn't matter. Um, but earned swag can also really make an impact, believe it or not. So that's the earned swag programming. And then also finding small contributions. This is also really important. I've worked in communities where there was nothing. Actually, this is an example from like a very small community that I worked at. I mean, there was like nothing. There was no one, there was no customers, no people. So you're building from scratch and it can be really difficult. So what you need to do with that is that anytime somebody does something, you want to take that and be like, wow, this is like so helpful. Thank you so much for doing this and like recognizing and gratitude and all this other kind of stuff. And this is kind of where you can start building your minimize the barrier to entry kind of roadmap on how to get people to do a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. So like this is an example where like this guy said something. I'm like, oh, I would love to hear more about this use case. Next thing you do, you try to get a quote from him and then maybe you get a video and then maybe you translate into a blog or whatever, but it's like little by little. All right. Making users feel like they're a part of something bigger. That's another thing. This is more like programming that you can think where you're like, how can we include everybody or like making this into more of a movement? I'm not going to dive into this too deep, but I do think that this is an important thing to just kind of think about. And then these are the takeaways overall for how to build a very successful community with lots of engagement and happy contributors. And if you have any questions, I don't have any slides here with my email, but like you can find me on LinkedIn. It's Karin Wallach, Wolok. I'll go through all my slides again, even though I had some mistakes in there, but that's the name right there in the corner. And you're welcome to reach out and I also have email address. You can reach out. It's pe@projectelevate.io. It's my like little consulting, like the email still works, even though I don't really do too much consulting anymore now that I'm working full time. But thank you guys so much for your time, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.